Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We're from group 6, and today we're going to talk about illustration. Next. Okay, so before we start the presentation, here are our group member. There is Annisa Shofi Prabandari, and Amrita Ikhtiyanti, and Raissa Putri Azzahra. Okay, so the first material is illustrating the text. Some texts require illustration. It's a good idea to discuss plans for illustrations with the author as early as possible. Authors and editors may not always agree, but once a decision is reached, illustrations require as much editorial attention as words. Next. So there are two kinds of illustration. There are artwork and photograph. So the first one is artwork. Artwork includes drawings, graphs, and maps, and it can be printed in black and white with one or more additional colors, or in full color. On the other hand, photograph, it can be printed in black and white, in another color, or in full color. And actually, photograph and artwork can be combined in one illustration, although that involves extra expense. So there are some things to consider to help choose which style of illustration that you want to put in the text. So the first one is the subject, the second one is the purpose, the third one is the intended readers, and the last one is cost and available budget. So here's the purpose of an illustration. An editor may ask about an illustration. So these are the questions that you can ask when you want to edit an illustration. The first one is, does it provide important additional information? And the second one is, does it provide useful supplementary information? And does it attract attention or generate emotion? And the last one is, does it none of these? Okay, so the next one is working with artists and artwork. Authors submitting their manuscripts to commercial publishers are typically expected to provide any required artwork themselves, as it is generally viewed as the author's responsibility in the publishing process. However, within various research institutions and extension agencies, artists are often readily available as part of their staff. Alternatively, authors can choose to hire freelance artists to create the necessary illustrations. In either case, establishing a consistent working relationship with the same artist, whether in-house or freelance, tends to be the most efficient approach. It's worth noting that some quality illustrations can be acquired without the need for an artist and at no cost, offering an additional resource for authors in certain situations. Next. So here's instruct the artist. It is worth spending time before an artist starts work explaining clearly in detail what is wanted, why the illustration is needed, and how it will be used. The instruction will be determined in part by the budget, the schedule, the skill of the illustrator, the capability of the printer, the purpose of the illustration, the nature of the intended readership, and the wishes of the author. Next. For the content, be as precise as possible about the content. In a case where no direct reference is available, create a rough sketch or offer a sample that explains the expectations. In written instructions, be explicit and detailed about what is needed, sparing no ambiguity. A clear and specific mode of communication increases the chances of attaining the intended outcome when collaborating with artists and illustrators. Next. For the style, selecting the appropriate style of artwork is a crucial decision. This choice is influenced in part by the available budget and the publication's characteristics. Additionally, the subject matter plays a significant role, as certain subjects are best represented in specific artistic styles, while others may require a different approach. Next. So here are some of the kinds of the style that you may want to use. The first one is line art. And here's the example of line art on the left, and then the continuous tone art on the right. Next. Okay, so for the purpose, reader, and reproduction. First one, explain the purpose. Artists who know why an illustration is wanted work more intelligently and more creatively. And then describe the readers. What is the most effective for the readers? And then explain how and where the illustration will be reproduced because it makes a difference. And then the last one, give physical specifications for the artwork. Most importantly, tell the artist the size and shape that are needed. Next. So for the schedule, check result and caption. Set the deadlines and allow time for revisions. Check the results at 2 stages, rough sketch and final artwork. Final artwork sometimes need a minor alteration. And then make sure the author approves the finished illustrations. And illustrations usually need brief amounts of text to identify them, and sometimes to explain points of special significance. Next. So here are some of the examples for the photograph. And as you can see, there is a brief definition or brief description about the image below the image. So that's the example of the caption. Editing, and the next one is editing graphs. Is this the best way to present data? Graph serves as an effective means for authors to present data in a straightforward way, especially when the aim is to illustrate trends, relationships, or make comparisons, whether it's analyzing trends over time or comparing various components of a whole. Graphs offer readers a visual way to observe patterns and messages by comparing different elements within the graph, making them a valuable tool for conveying information concisely and comprehensively. Next. So is this the best form of graph for the data? So there are also some kinds of graphs that you can choose as for the illustration. So the first one, the top left one is scatter graph. The top right one is the line graph, and the middle and the below one is column graph. Next. Okay, so here are still some of the kinds of graphs that you can choose. The upper left one is semi-logarithmic graph, and the upper right one is pie chart, and the middle one is bar graph. Okay, so the most important lines should be the heaviest or the thickest, while the least important lines are the lightest or thinnest. In order of importance, the parts of a line graph normally are the first one, curves and data points, labels identifying the axis, numbers at intervals on the axis and any words identifying the curves, axis lines and the grid text on the axis lines, or many people suggest these should be half the thickness of the curves. And the last one is line showing means of a number of observations. The same order of importance can be applied to other style of graph. Next. Axis should stretch to the last data point in either dimension or to one interval beyond that point. Longer axis waste space, shorter axis leave the data without a reference point. And curves can be made distinctive by assigning different symbols to each curve at the data points. Another solution is to use different kinds of lines. One might be solid line, one can be dashed line, and one can be formed of dots. However, this does not work well if the curves cross. In column and bar graph and pie charts, each series can be assigned with different pattern. The neatest method is to use transfer tones in different screens. So each graph should be mentioned in the text. If there's no reference, it may be an oversight, or it may suggest that the graph is unnecessary. The graphs are normally numbered in order which it appears with all other illustration in the series called figures. Next. So to anticipate too much information in a graph, there's a general rule or limitation of the data shown in the graph. Line graphs should be limited to 4 or 5 curves. Column graphs should be limited no more than 3 or 4 columns in a group. Next.
So the next one is thing maps. Okay. Maps present special problems because they contain so much information, not only graphic, but textual material, not just lines and shades, but words and often data. So the first one is judging myths. So is a map necessary? So editor should carefully consider whether a map is necessary in publication. So they should assess if the map provides vital information and makes the text easier to understand, reveals patterns that are not obvious in the text, and just decorative. So how much information is needed in the map? So keep maps simple, and few people know how to read a complicated map. Too much information confuses them. So also complex maps are more expensive to make. And then what kind of map is needed? So there are the kind of maps. The first one is reference maps. It helps with location and navigation. And it answers questions like where is it or how do I get there? And it provides basic geographic information. While the thematic maps, it goes beyond location to show patterns and relationship, and it depicts data like rainfall, population density, crop areas, disease prevalence, or species distribution. And it also contains minimal reference material, usually a few place names for the context. So how to prepare a map? The first one we have to do is there an existing map that can be used? So when making a map, check if a basic base map of the area is available. So these maps outline the country or region, and they're a time saver. So you can just add new data using other existing maps for different purposes, is usually tricky and tricky, so they might have too much or too little detail. So existing maps are useful as references when creating new ones, but be careful when using them. And who will draw the map? So drawing maps is a unique skill. So another maps can look unprofessional. So authors and editors often lack this expertise. So it's best to ask authors for maps from a cartographer or a skilled illustrator if necessary. So if the author cannot provide one, so it's best to collaborate with a cartographer or illustrator. And what do we need from the author? So an existing map of the area for a reference or information on where to find one. And we also need a sketch map, carefully drawn from an existing map, indicating all features for the final map, and a type list of all map labels organized by feature, type, and importance. Include names of place, rivers, lakes, geographical units, and any words for symbols or roads. So what does the illustrator need? So the illustrator need the first one, all maps from the author and fully edited content, and size and printing details for the map. And the third one, artwork specification to meet publisher standards, and a schedule for map completion. And the last one, a budget for the map if applicable. So this is one of the example of the map. So things to watch if we want to add map in our publication. The first one is we have to make sure is the final map acceptable for publication. So to evaluate a map for publication, we have to consider some of the things. The first one is size, clarity, and readability. And the second one, consistency with text. The third one, tone and symbol differentiation. The fourth one, context elements, including latitude, longitude, and scale. And the fifth one, artistic balance. The sixth one, data source credit. And the last one, address political sensitivities. And the next one is choosing photograph. So artwork and photos demand skill and effort. So editors can request multiple images from authors and photographers to select the best fit for publication. So editors provide fresh perspective and align choices with the publication's overall needs and plans. So explain in advance. The first one, define your needs. Explain why, how, when, and for whom the pictures are intended. And the second one, we have to be specific. So clear instructions improve the change of getting desired results. And the third one, collaborate. So work with photographers and authors and share ideas and spot potential shots. And avoid figure requests. Provide guidance to prevent disappointment. And then the last one, educate authors. Explain what makes a good photo and your publishing preferences. So while in choosing photos, the editor should be considering this kind of things. The first one is technical quality. So assess the image technical excellence. And the second one, message. Consider how well it conveys the intended message. And the third one, composition. So we evaluate the image composition for visual impact. So editors might need to enhance photos through cropping or choose among multiple images. And the next one, technical quality. So in technical quality, we have to consider some of the things. The first one is exposure. So it ensures the photo is correctly exposed, not too light or not too dark. And the second one is focus. So we have to check if the image is sharp and clear and all the essential elements should be in focus. And the third one is clarity. So examine whether important details are clear and visible. And the fourth one, contrast. So ensure there's enough contrast between the subject and the background. So low contrast can make the subject hard to distinguish. And the fifth one, tones. So look for a range of tones in black and white photos, from dark to light to ensure clarity in both shadows and bright areas. And the next one is scale. So check if the photographer indicated size, often using object like a meter stick, coin, or recognizable items for reference. And there's physical standards. So in physical standards, there are some of the things that also editors should consider. The first one is size. So prefer prints between 90 kali 125 millimeters and 200 kali 250 millimeters. And the next one, surface, glossy or near glossy finishes reproduce best. And the third one, condition, check for cleanliness, creases, folds, and marks. And the next one, color versus black and white. So consider quality and color contrast. And the last one is for color production. Use clean and marked transparencies when possible. And the next one is the message of the photograph that editor wants to include in the publication. The first one to be considered is clarity and recognition. So ensure the message is easy to understand and subjects are recognizable. So fewer words are often better for non-specialist publication. And the next one should be considered is unity. A photo should convey a single principal message and focus on what's essential, avoiding unrelated elements. So the next one is details. So check if details support the main message or provide context. And the last one is distraction. So look out for distracting details, especially in the background, and consider cropping them out when possible. Okay, so the next one is the editor also has to consider the relationship. So evaluate the relationship between photos in the same publication article. So ensure consistency in lighting, background, and approach for closely related image, such as before and after treatment. And the next one also interest. So assessing photo interest, distinguish photos by making them unique, avoiding excessive similarity, especially in technical image. And photos should capture emotions, actions, and individuals, standing out with strong message. And seek creativity through unusual angles, lighting, or unexpected moments, giving photos a distinct appeal that engage readers. The next one, composition. So center of interest. So ensure the photo has a clear single focal point to direct the reader's eye and convey the message effectively. And rule of thirds. So consider placing the subject slightly off center using a grid dividing the image into thirds for a more dynamic composition. And balance. So strive for a balanced feel in the photo, whether it's symmetrical or non-symmetrical, to avoid making one side seem heavier than the other. So the next one is impact and use of space. So impact, seeks strong, simple composition using technique like emphasizing the main subject or utilizing strong lines and foreground elements. So editor should recognize this technique, preserve the photo's impact. And the next one is use of space. So ensure the shape of the photo aligns with the subject, minimizing empty space to make every part of the image informative. So avoid excess space between people or objects, which can appear larger in photos and distract from the main message. So the next one is using photograph for effect. So here are 16 further suggestions, especially for editors of newsletters and other publication for the non-specialist. So the first one is make photos big. So small photos don't catch the reader's eye. And the second one, do not use too many because too many photos make a clutter. And the third one is do not use bad photos because you will bore and eventually lose the readers. And the next one, avoid ID or passport style photos because people prefer image with a body. And the next one, avoid grip and grain photos. It's like picture of people smiling as they shake hands or say words. And the next one, plan in advance. The next one is if you want to show a crowd, make sure it's a crowd. And the next one is show the face. And the third one, arrange photos so they face into the page or across to the facing page. Envelope photos if you must, but use caution and do not use a second color with half tones. And the next one, avoid the merely pretty. And the next one, look for photos in the files and do not give up and crop ruthlessly.
So for the next one is writing captions. Most photographs need some word to support them. This text is often called a caption. Good captions add to the impact of good photographs, and they should be short, and caption demand effort and skill. Next. And here are some guidelines. The first one is keep captions short, make them easy to find, explain and identify, don't explain the obvious, make the caption photo combination stand alone, get to the point quickly, make them fit, and give credit. Next. And the next is basics of photography. Editors who take their own photograph have to understand how a camera works. This unit is a brief, simple introduction for both kinds of editor. Next. The first one is camera basics. We can control the amount of light entering the camera in two ways. The first way by the aperture or by changing the size of the opening through which light enters. And the second way is by the shutter speed or by changing the amount of time the light is allowed to enter. Next. And the next is things to watch. The first is focus, the sharpness of the image. The second is aperture, the size of the opening, and the last is shutter speed or the amount of time the shutter is open. And next is lenses. These lenses may be telephoto lenses, which enlarge the image. They are like telescopes or binoculars and make distant objects seem close up. Others are wide-angle lenses, which make it possible to photograph more than is normally possible of a landscape or a room, even 118 degrees. Next. And the next is depth of field. The space between these 2 points, the nearest and the farthest points that are in focus at one time, is called the depth of field. The depth of field may stretch from 1 meter in front of the camera all the way to the horizon. Under other conditions, the depth of field may be only a few centimeters around the object that is being photographed. Next. And the next is film. Film come in different size to fit different kinds of cameras. Film may be black and white or color. It may be negative or positive. And film speed is measured in various units. Two of the most common are known as ASA and DIN. Next. The next is film processing. The first is black and white film is made up of very thin layers. The two most important layers are the base, which is transparent, and the emulsion, which is supported by the base. Next. Prints can be made either in a contact frame or in an enlarger. Color film is based on the same principle of a sandwich, and paper for printing black and white photograph varies in speed, contrast, and color. And the next one is taking photographs. Here are some rules to follow in working with the camera. The first one is hold the camera steady, remember focus, shutter speed, and aperture, looking straight, squeeze the shutter, keep the lens clean. Next. Moving close to the subject, keep the message simple, choose a background, look natural, watch the position of the sun, and take more than one picture. Preparing illustration for the printer. Manuscript can be penciled, cut with scissors, passed together, or stapled. Some photographs can never be duplicated again because they show a unique event or capture a particularly unusual actions. Illustrations must be edited and they must go to the printer with clear.
Okay, so that's all. That's all from our presentation about illustrations. We hope that our presentation can be helpful for you guys, and we sincerely apologize if we made mistakes throughout our presentation. So thank you so much for listening, and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.